Hello again to everyone in this video clip series that I'm calling My Journey to God in a Very Secularized World. I would like to, and this should be video clip number 20, it should be. I would like to continue a little bit more on this Father Minutella here in Italy, because I think this problem explains a lot. Well, I think might help a lot of people, in particular those who at least have the faith. They're still praying, they have the faith, and they're confused, because the devil works not only on the left side, but also on the right side. Because many people, I mean, at least the ones who are praying, realize the danger of those on the left, the liberals, who live as if sin does not exist, because God is love and merciful and does do whatever you want, because He loves you. It's like, it's like reducing us to animals without responsibility, because they believe that heaven is automatic, or at least hell does not exist. Those on the left do not realize that God does not send anyone to hell. They say, "Our Father," Our Father, they say, "Thy will be done," but they live, "My will be done." And thus when they die, it is they themselves who do not want to be with God, because I'm in charge of my life, not God. So when they die, they're the ones who do not want to spend eternity with God. I'd say this phrase sometimes to people: in heaven, there's room for one God, not two. In hell, everybody thinks they're God, and they live that way. So anyway, I think I would rather be in heaven under God than in hell under Satan, where everybody wants to make war among themselves for all eternity. It's interesting also that Father Gabriele Amorth, Exorcista del Vaticano before, and many other important exorcists, tell us that they say that the greatest success of Satan is to have convinced so many people that the devil does not exist, and thus hell does not exist, and thus sin does not exist, and thus we don't need a savior. All the religion collapses with this strategy of Satan. But then I would like to continue here that those on the right side, excuse me, English. But those on the right side are equally dangerous, and also is perhaps more hidden the risk to lose the foundation of all virtues, humility, and to slide away from God. From God's point of view, the older son was worse than the prodigal son. And with all this confusion after the Second Vatican Council, I also went through, as many of you, through many difficult but educational experiences. I repeat a little bit of this. Following the advice of my parents, I spent 3 years with my sister in a cult associated with the false seer in Nacita, Wisconsin, which in the end of this experience, I wrote a book and a few articles to help many people leave this cult, which you can find. It's even still on Wikipedia. It's called "My Personal Reasons Why I Left the Shrine in Nacita, Wisconsin." And then, but shortly afterwards, I lost my parents and my sister with their husband and 7 children in a group of Sedivacantists. And I wrote an article that you could find about that called A Common Sense Rebuttal to Schismatic Traditionalists and Sedivacantists. Then I spent 6 years in a religious congregation, the Oblates of the Virgin Mary, which underwent a great crisis beginning in June of 1988. And you might find an article that I wrote a little bit about that and other references. I took most of my articles off of this because some people in that congregation put great pressure on me to not explain the real truth of the problem in that congregation, even to the point of sending me, paying money to a hacker to close me down. Anyway, you might read this article that's called The Great Responsibility of Religious Leaders. You can find that on the website in the internet. And then I spent many years in the Focolare movement as a priest volunteer, which more and more, by way of false, in particular after the death of Karol Lubick, by way of false ecumenism and false unity, it ended up resulting in a reductionism to the lowest common denominator, to remain all together, to offend no one, which will end up being a great help in the formation of a one world religion, which will be emptied of all its divine content, as Fulton Sheen explained. That is, emptied of the truth who is Christ. Because there's a great push, not to offend anyone, there's no sin, and this Focolare movement had good principles, but if you begin to remain silent about the whole truth, but only talk about everybody's happy with this part of the truth, but the difficult part you don't talk about, you end up losing everything. You might, I think I mentioned once before about the prophecy of Our Lady of Good Success, approved by the church over 400 years ago, Quito, Ecuador, that she talked about this remaining silent. And she even indicated that one in particular, not plural, but one in particular, in this period of crisis, will remain silent. Think about that. Pope Francis, Cardinal Bergoglio, he surrounds himself with those bishops and priests who promote the culture of death. And he criticizes those who remain, he calls them rigid, because those who remain faithful with the truth of God that does not change with the world are accused of being rigid. You have to change with the world for love. Jesus said in the Gospels, he says, heaven and earth will pass away before one iota changes of the law of God. I prefer to be rigid with Christ rather than change with the world. And then another experience here was I was incarnated into the Diocese of Perugia in June 1993, where the priests are systematically brainwashed in the modern Church of Relativism. I will have another video clip on this to go more in detail of this, which you can find in my article with the title, Priests Systematically Brainwashed. And then I lost my parish in October 13, 2015, suddenly, and they didn't even talk to me beforehand. They just took the parish away because the people wanted that. And because the people in the parish were not happy to hear the gospel explained according to the Catechism of the Catholic Church. And I think a lot of priests are going through the same suffering as I have went through it and so many others. And then I offered my priestly services to the Neo-Catechumenal Way at Perugia for 10 years, beginning in 2005 to 2015, until I discovered for the first time that the Neo-Catechumens, along with their three founders, refused to obey Pope John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI, who said to them often that it is necessary to obey faithfully and exactly the liturgical books of the Church regarding the Holy Mass. And you can find this in more detail in my article, The Neo-Catechumenal Mass. Because the Holy Mass is a gift from God. It's not our property with which we can play with it to give us pleasure the way we like it. The Eucharist is the source and summit of the Christian life. I said to my parishioners that it is necessary to treat the Eucharist as one must treat God in person, not as a piece of bread, as do many Catholics today who have lost their faith in the real presence of Jesus Christ. I believe that this movement will be a great help in leading many Catholics to accept a Mass that is not valid according to the prophecy of the prophet Daniel, the abomination of desolation that Jesus called it, Matthew 24:15. In the Daniel it says, the continual burnt offering will be taken away, and the sacrifice and offering will cease for 1,290 days. That is the Holy Mass. Oh, and this video clip here, may God bless you and Mary guide you.